Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast, the show where we fearlessly dive into the untold stories of real estate investors' greatest setbacks and how they turned those failures into resounding successes. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and we're talking with real estate investors across the country to learn exactly how and why they failed, and how they took that failure and turned it into a powerful lesson for their business. So come along with me, Kate Berry, on this transformative journey from failure to fortune. I invite you to join our supportive community where together we can inspire, educate, and motivate each other to achieve all of our real estate investing goals. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. I'm your host, Kate Berry, and on this show, we fearlessly delve deep into the journeys of real estate investors who have turned their failures into fortunes. I'm here today with our guest, Martin Papp. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yes, we're excited to have you. Martin has 10 years in real estate experience overseas, which we're really excited to get into your story of how you were doing real estate overseas. He's an entrepreneur and business owner of his thriving business tea brand, Pabst Tea. So you are extremely dynamic, very interesting. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kate, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here in my own home.
And yeah, right. Thank you for being here.
Welcome to my office.
Nice. Yes. And thank you for everyone joining us today. So tell us, share about your background, how you got, who you are, where you come from.
Sure. As I said, or as Kate said, I'm Martin Papp. I'm 37 years old now, and I currently live in California, Southern California, in Orange County. Married, going almost on 10 years now, and also have, thank you. And I also have a 7-year-old son.
Oh, that's great. I've got a 5-year-old. So
wonderful.
Yeah, nice. Well, that's awesome. How did you get involved in real estate?
It starts from really all the way back to college, where I graduated from St. Louis University in 2008. Mm-hmm. And I was reading a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
I love that book.
Good book. If anybody's listening that hasn't read that, check it out.
Write it down. Write that down.
Timeless. But one of the key takeaways of that book really struck with me. And it was obviously the book had a lot of components, but the one thing that was really standing out to me was that a lot of success in a person's career is highly reliant on your environment. It's about when you were born, where you were born, who did you know, what kind of tools and resources did you have around you? And it's a lot less about your own personal growth and your own personal skills. Like maybe that's 10%, but 90% is the environment.
Yeah.
And so I was graduating right at that time. And if anybody remembers what was happening in 2008, it was an economic crisis.
Absolutely. It's so crazy to look back at that time now. And when it was happening, I was also graduating from college and I was taking economics classes and we were learning about it as it was happening, but I didn't truly understand it because I hadn't bought real estate at that point. I hadn't been an investor, and you're still dealing with the after effects of that time and period in the market today and the real estate market today, especially.
Correct. And so that was, I was graduating into it. And there was really not a lot of opportunity domestically. And I was reading this section of the book where it said people that graduated into the Great Depression in 1929, they had long-term effects. Not only did it stunt their economic wealth, but it also stunted their expectations in life. It created bad behaviors of kind of just accepting that life is this way. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I need to put myself in an environment where I could be thriving, a place that I can grow. And I had done a study abroad program in Shanghai in 2007. And that place at the time was booming.
Right, of course.
So
and like there was a lot going on over there.
Yeah, so I decided to move to China with the intention of learning Chinese. And in end of 2008, I was heading off to Asia. I spent some time in Nepal. I worked at an NGO building a library. That was actually my very first real estate kind of experience, where we were literally like digging in the dirt and pounding rocks into the soil.
Nice.
And then from there, I hopped on a plane from Kathmandu all the way to Jiangxi, Nanchang. I had a backpack and a guitar. And that was like, I was like, I'm here. I'm going to learn Chinese. I'm going to totally immerse myself. I was young and I just started learning Chinese and I started playing guitar. Well, I mean, I'd already been playing guitar, but I started playing guitar in bars and it kind of took off. This organic like music career started blossoming where I was getting invited to shows in different parts of the country. And I ended up doing something called Kwai, which is a American Idol version, but in China on Hunan TV. And from there, I became one of the finalists. I was first place in Nanchang in our city. And then that went to the national stage. And from there was a record label in Beijing that asked me to move to Beijing and sign with them for 3 years. So I became a performing artist full time for 3 years in my early 20s, where I was touring all around China.
Great. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
my Chinese got pretty good. Started speaking, more and more. Started performing in Chinese, and I started hosting television and also acting in Chinese. So
Very
I don't know
cool.
how many Chinese listeners you have, but 如果你们想跟我讲中文，你可以讲中文。
That's amazing.
Thank you. And this is all getting into real estate, so we're getting there. But I was traveling all around the country, and I knew that I wasn't going to have this as a long-term career. This was very much a moment in time where I was young and I was having the ability to be the white guy in China speaking and singing in Chinese, and there was a novelty to it, and I recognized that, and I knew that this wasn't going to always last. So I really wanted to transition this into something more long-term, more sustainable. I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I started a company after I met my wife. We got married in Sichuan, and we started a company called Pabst Tea. And it is a modern tea brand that is bringing teas from all over the world into China. So our entire market is domestic distribution of teas to Chinese customers. And it seems a little bit counterintuitive. It's like, what is an American going to China to sell Chinese people tea? The tea comes from China. It's like their culture. And that's true, but that actually created a very interesting niche for me because people love drinking tea there more than in the United States. Like it's just part of everyday life, tea drinking. And yet there was actually very little exposure at the time of how Westerners and Western culture drank tea.
Sure.
So in China, have you ever been to China?
No, I haven't.
Well, when you go, let me know because I want to show you around just a few places. But they drink tea straight. So it's just like a black tea or an oolong tea or something like that with just hot water. And it's the purest of the pure type of way of tea drinking. And I was out here visiting family and stuff in the United States. And I'm looking at Tivana, I'm looking at David's Tea, I'm looking at all these really cool brands where they're like doing these blends and they're mixing with fruits. They're doing mango peel. They're doing different herbs. Yeah, they're doing herbs with like taking chamomile tea and mixing it with other types of tea.
Nice.
Yerba mate from South America. Yes, exactly. So like we were one of the first companies to actually provide any type of education about what mate is in China. So if you Google something about mate in Chinese, at least on Baidu in the Chinese search engine, like that's probably our content.
Nice.
So I was bringing in foreign teas. And so now currently I still run that business remotely. It's one of my main sources of income. We've got 2 offices, one in Beijing and one in Shanghai. And we sell to over 400 locations across China. I started opening retail stores. We got venture capital funding from a VC firm in Shanghai called Bits and Bytes.
Okay, cool.
And we started doing cafes. We started doing retail. And that is really where I started getting into more real estate. I started doing designs of stores, designs of restaurants, working with landlords, working with contractors, signing leases, like all that stuff. And we were opening multiple stores. And so my real estate game really got up to snuff by just dealing with Chinese contractors and Chinese landlords. And we're renovating all sorts of spaces simultaneously, also selling tea online.
Someone helping you on the ground, or I mean, how are you making these connections and getting these systems in place?
Well, I got to give a lot of credit to my wife because I think as a foreigner in China, there's a lot of obstacles, restrictions. I mean, a lot of restrictions for foreigners. And so having a Chinese counterpart that you can trust is really important. So my wife handled a lot of the admin kind of work. And if there was ever certain situations where I was like, I just can't do it, like I need you to step in and help me with this, she would be there. But I'm kind of that personality that's it's a strength of one of the skills that I bring is that I'm a very adaptive person. And so I can work with different types of people. And that's where my knack for foreign real estate really came into play. We started making money, that business is profitable, and it led us to start investing into real estate with our own funds.
Cool.
So we bought apartments in Beijing.
Yeah. Nice. Were you looking at small multifamilies, big complexes?
Yeah. So in China, it's not as simple as I think in the United States where you can kind of just build buildings or buy these like 3-story structures. You're basically limited to buying condos essentially in the cities because everything's built like 40 stories high. So you're not doing little developments. You're either doing really big stuff or you're buying individual units. And so we started buying residential units in downtown Beijing. I would do short-term rentals of those. We would rent them out on Airbnb. This is where I got my feet wet into STRs and being an Airbnb host. And I had a lot of fun with it. I can't tell you how much fun I had making like little like welcome packet, introducing my family and like, here's the restaurants you want to visit when you're in town. And like,
what year was that when you were getting?
This was in like 2016, 2017.
Well, that was like when it was like the sweet spot. That
Yeah.
time. And now it's pretty tough, I'm sure.
China's taken a big turn and it's also changed my life. So China real estate was booming then. And then the pandemic happened. And once the pandemic rolled in, we closed all our stores. I don't have any more storefronts in China. And I couldn't even travel back and forth. So when my son was born, backing up just a little bit, I wanted him born in the United States. So I was doing this, double life, a month in China, a month in the US, a month in China, a month in the US. I didn't mind the travel, but it just wasn't possible once, 2020 hit.
Right.
And so from that point on, I had to reimagine how I was going to run this business, how I was going to handle all of this. And so I made the decision that I was going to plant my feet in the United States and run the Chinese business remotely. So a lot of things changed at that point. And so I still have those rental units, but even Airbnb pulled out of China. Like I can't even do Airbnb in China anymore. So there's also the real estate market isn't as hot as it used to be. In fact, it's probably the worst it's ever been since I've been alive. And so we're still renting those out, but those are done through long-term rentals now.
You're doing long-term rentals there.
Yeah. And we also, let me back up just a little bit to make the chronology make sense here. But as things were going well in 2016, 2017.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
Yeah. We also started buying property outside China. So we also got a vacation rental in Phuket in Thailand. And I started doing rentals with that. We hired a property management company to run that. And then we also ended up doing property here in US. So I built from the ground up a home in West Hollywood. It's a house right next to Seth Rogen. We bought the lot, tore down an old home and did a complete rebuild. And this is again where I got real like boots on the ground, like working with the contractors, the architects, the city, getting the permits, and really developed the competence and confidence to do like this. Hey, this isn't rocket science. Like real estate, what's so cool about it is that as long as you're relatively intelligent and have common sense, you can do it too. It is not,
it's simple, right? It's not easy because it is risky and it is a lot of information, especially if you're doing something challenging. That's not maybe what everyone is doing.
Correct. I agree with you. And nothing good comes easy. And there's stiff competition. But in relation to the fact that to be some things in life, it takes years and years of like being a mathematician, studying physics, being a doctor, the medical school, like it's much easier than those things, in my opinion. You just kind of need to have a good head on your shoulders, make good decisions. It's about making decisions and less about the understanding the periodic table. So it's a great opportunity for people that have a good work ethic, a good discipline. And I realized that. And I was like, oh, I could do this. Like I can do real estate. And I flipped that property in West Hollywood and made a ton of money.
Yeah.
And, we put in about 2 million and sold it for 2.8. And at that moment, there was an aha moment for me that was like, oh my God, this is like 3 times the amount of salary that I've made over the last few years doing my tea company. And I worked hard on that tea. Like I would get deals with restaurants or hotels for tea, and it would take me 6 months to land a deal. I'd be following up, talking to procurement manager, talking to the food and beverage, manager. And then we got to get thrown over to finance.
Yeah.
And
It's a tough industry, anything brick and mortar, especially cafes,
yeah. And so what would happen is I would make a deal and I'd be like, hell yeah, we just landed like 10 stores. And I'd get the first order would come in and it was for like $5,000. And I'm like, all right. Like, what would happen if I spent the same amount of effort, 6 months of my time, landing a deal that instead didn't give me 5,000, but gave me 5 million? And that's when I started thinking differently about where I wanted to spend my time. And I decided I want to go into higher value assets. Selling tea I love drinking tea, but once I ran that tea business, I was like, I'm never going to be selling a cheap commodity again, because you have to have such volume in scale to really make the financial impact that you want.
Yeah, that's right. And it's constant, right? The marketing is constant, the advertising, getting more every day. The other competition comes in. It's brutal.
Yeah, retaining customers is a full-time job in itself. And so anyway, I also bought real estates for a rental here in Orange County, a condo, and it was hitting me with these HOA fees. I was paying over $900 on HOA fees just for this condo near John Wayne Airport. And I'm renting it out, and I've got property management company helping me do it. And I'm looking at the returns and I'm comparing them from my villa in Phuket and then my condo here in California. And I'm like, oh man, like there's no comparison here. The overseas properties on the ROI front crush it.
Right.
I think, and I hate to deter people that do business in the US because all the power to you, but I just found it was easier, ironically, to be investing in overseas properties and getting higher yields. There's just more room for error. There's more meat on the bone. And so you don't have to be, I feel like in the United States, if you're doing like multifamily or something and you're getting into debt and you're leveraging, like the fine margins matter.
Yes.
It's like that 1% difference.
Yep, that's right.
Makes or breaks a deal.
And then you add on just the cost and the inflation. We live in now a world where the cost of materials is very, very high and the cost for service is very, very high. So having someone that's skilled, and then the cost to carry, taxes, insurance, utilities.
Yeah. And so a great example of that is I remember getting a bill for fixing a refrigerator in the condo. And it was like just the labor costs alone to do the inspection and do a little fix that maybe took a couple hours. They hit me with like a $500 bill. And the same exact stuff happens in Thailand, by the way. But that was like the property manager comes like, oh, we have our own guy. Like he just comes in and fixes it and like, you're good. I didn't even pay anything.
Right.
That's just like part of their service is like, hey, we manage this for you. And if you have, so here's, I think an important distinction is that going overseas is not a one size fits all. It depends on the country, it depends on the regulations, it depends on the economy. But if you're looking at what I focus on is like tourism markets, places where you're getting Western tourists with Western salaries, they'll pay good money to stay at nice places.
They will, absolutely. And it's the same with us here in Vermont. We are a highly tourist driven area. And that's why I like investing in Vermont myself. I like living because we do get money coming in from other places of people that are there literally to spend money.
Right.
And if people are not going to want to stop going to Thailand on vacation, right? That's never going to stop.
Exactly. And I think you've made a big and important distinction there is that they're there to spend money. So when you're a tourist or you're a vacationer or when you're traveling the world, you have already made the mental decision that I'm looking for a good time and I will pay for what it gives, what I need to be comfortable to have a good time. And so in these places like Thailand or Bali or Costa Rica, Colombia, if you build property there, you can build at really low rates compared to the United States. And I mean $100 per square foot.
Sure, right.
I mean, you'll never get that in the US anymore.
Even in Vermont, the quote is around 400 to 500 a square foot.
Yeah. Yeah. And even higher here in California. So it's a fraction of the cost to build something nice. And yet you're not going to be able to charge rental rates that are comparable to, say, in California, like coastline, but you can still charge pretty decent rates where you're going to develop yields, where you can get yields on a property of 15 to 25%.
That's right.
And that's not hard as long as you're, again, having common sense, taking care of the property, you know.
It sounds like to me the hard part would be how to execute that remotely.
Correct. And I think that is where I come in, is that something that I'm good at. And it's something that I've now turned into a business. So all that introductory story has led up to what I'm doing now is I created a syndication called the Nova House. It is a fund that we pool investor capital together and we execute exactly what I just talked about, where we build, so we buy land, we then build on the land and turn them into amazing rental properties. So we're talking 6-bedroom, 7-bedroom luxury villas where you're going to charge a premium rate. You're going to have a maid on staff. You're going to have in-house chef if the tenants want it.
Yeah, adding the add-ons, the amenities.
All the add-ons. And so we're charging a few $1,000s a night for these properties because they're ocean views, they're in the best locations. And so that way we can produce those kind of yields where you're getting 20% return on your investment per year.
Yeah.
And there are ways, and obviously the execution of that can feel intimidating, but we've broken it down into steps. We have a playbook. We have a very specific path we follow to reduce risk. We're not taking on inordinate amounts of debt. Most of our deals are all cash.
Nice.
We also...
In specific markets?
Yeah, it depends because certain markets don't have the infrastructure to take on that kind of debt. Mm-hmm. So the US is a very advanced system. It's an advanced economy. There's all creative ways to get financing. Go to Thailand as a foreigner, very hard. You can go, bank's not going to give you a loan.
Right. So you mostly need to be working in cash.
Correct. Now then I said by market, because we also now are doing 2 projects currently under development in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And in Costa Rica, you can do financing. So it depends on the markets you're in. It depends on the financial banking system of the country. And so we do a lot of that research. We do research into safety and regulation, which markets are going to be safe, which properties, where places that foreigners can have freehold rights, or if it's a long-term lease, like what are the restrictions involved? And then we look at a top-down approach as opposed to bottom-up. So the piece of advice I could give on this podcast very simply is that if you are going to go do investing abroad where you want to own an Airbnb or a rental property, we have found that it usually needs to be done in the opposite order of how people normally do it, which is normally somebody goes down there and they look at a piece of property and they're like, I love this property. This is what I want to build something on this. And then you have to go out and find the right agent to help you make the deal. You have to find the lawyer, then you have to find the architect, then you have to find the contractor. And all of that is like pushing a big boulder up a hill. Like it gets more and more complicated as you go. What we do is we do a very in-depth analysis of rules and regulations and market data. So we're using enterprise level air DNA. We're going all through the markets, finding the best spots, finding comps, finding Airbnb properties that are doing well and saying, okay, if we do something like this in this area, this is what we can expect. And then instead of finding a property first, that's one of the last things we do. Then we go and find the right architect or we go find the right legal firm. So we start asking around, we do online searching, reviews. Who are going to be the best attorneys in this local area that's worked with foreigners, that's worked with, high net worth individuals that are doing nice properties. Same with the architects. We make sure that we find architects that have beautiful properties, proof of concept is there. They know what they're doing. We never bring in a foreign attorney, like meaning somebody from the US to go build something in Costa Rica.
Oh, yeah.
Without going into too much detail, you're just asking for a lot of problems because they don't know what materials to use. They don't know what it's like to work with local contractors there.
Local relationships for working that stuff out.
Correct.
Like stuff is still very much, because I know it happens in Vermont too, because Vermont is not as advanced necessarily in other parts of the country. So when investors come here and they want to buy something, they don't understand the local politics or how zoning works or how Act 250 works, very specific to our market. They will fail in the first year because they're going to not have anticipated any of those, that part of the timeline, cost, execution.
Yeah. It's such a great example that this happens in the US too. Just going out of state, going to a different city, like it matters. And why give yourself the extra complications of trying to work with a friend that you have who's an architect in your neighborhood? So I make it clear that this is business and we're only going to work with the best people. And so most people make the mistake of like, oh, I have an uncle who has land down in Nicaragua. You should talk to him. He could give you a great deal. And you start thinking about, oh, I could get a good deal on this piece of land because I have the right contact. It's like, that's a path of disaster.
Sure, that's right.
Maybe the land's not the best place to be. Maybe the title, something's wrong with the title. Maybe the agent was just trying to make a deal with you and you're not doing the due diligence required to make sure it works. Yeah. So work top down, where we find the legal firm, we find the architect. And then from there, I also, even before I find the property, I've already setting up interviews with contractors that the architects recommend that they've done deals with. Okay. And so I'm getting all of the lay of the land. And every step of the way, by the way, I'm asking them, if you were going to invest in an Airbnb, where would you do it?
Perfect. Yes.
If I'm going to invest, what are the things that I need to stay away from?
Yes.
So I'm getting all of that information out of the way up front, rather than locking myself into a property that I find out later actually can't get water access because the city won't permit, because water is too precious here. So it's a year waiting list.
I think something in real estate that people that are very successful in real estate understand, which is you have to work with people that are specialized and can provide high levels of consultation to you. You have to provide value back to them, right? You have to be the one putting the money behind what you're saying, bringing forth the deals, kind of bringing it to that fruition point. But you're also on the same side making it easy for the investor because you've already done all the work.
Yeah.
So I think it's really brilliant how you're setting it up.
Oh, thank you. It's about reducing risk. This is how you go about doing these things where you're not going to run into problems. And it has to be done top down. And then once you get to that stage where you know who you want to work with, you have the architect, you have the lawyers, you have all of their advice as well. Yes. By the way, this is all free. People are like, oh, this sounds expensive. No, like the fees come in once you make a deal.
Sure.
The fees come in from the lawyer, like once you acquire a property, then you have closing costs. But all that consultation up front, though, they're more than welcome to give it to you. We also contact Airbnb hosts because you also have to think about managing the property afterwards. So I found great results by saying, well, who's going to run this property? Well, look at the other Airbnbs in the area.
Sure.
Look at their host pages. It's public. Yes. See who has great reviews, contact them, send them a message and say, hey, I'm going to be doing an Airbnb here. I'd love to know if this is something that you think is a good idea from your experience. What are the costs that I might not be seeing here? Would you mind sharing how much it costs for you to run this Airbnb in this location?
Have you found positive responses from most people?
Not most. Most say no. But this is a numbers game. So you find 20 comps that you like. Mm-hmm. You send all the messages saying, hey, like, I'm also thinking about doing an Airbnb. I really like the property that you have here. I'm really curious if you could share with me your experience, and start from there. Yeah. And some of them will tell you it's really hard, and say like, only do it if you really love it, And then some will say like, and I go to the point of asking them for a list of costs. Yeah. And some of them say no, but then you're going to get a few that want to tell you their story, that are happy to share. And it's mutual because at the end of the day, they know that they might be able to be the property host for you. Because I'm not going to do it. Right. I'm living in the United States.
That's who you want. You want someone that has that mindset of abundance. There's enough for everyone. And there's opportunity with someone that is coming to purchase property. There's opportunity for those that are already there to become on the property.
And guess what? Those are the people that become your power partners. Those are the people that now are going to be managing our property down there. And those are the people I like to work with.
Yes. they're the ones. That's really, really great advice. What a great tip, because like you said, you kind of have to numbers game. You have to ask a lot of people. You're probably going to get a lot of rejections or people saying no, but that's part of the process to get to the yes. That is the greatest piece of, part of your business or nugget of information. It's worth that hard work, right?
Yeah. And you need to be candid. You need to be sincere, and people can feel that authenticity. And some people that are in the abundance mindset are going to be like, yeah, I'd love to help you. And only after that do I then go and find a property. Because then now I know I have the team in place. They've given me all of their pieces of advice. I know what I need to be looking for. And then I go talk with the property agent that's recommended by the lawyer that says this is the one that does a lot of deals. They know what they're doing. And then the property comes last.
That's so smart. I think that makes so much sense. And then when you have that property, now you can execute very quickly, because it's just like a domino, right? Like just like
exactly. And then on the positive side of doing business abroad, I have found from my experience that regulations are actually far less in these emerging markets. So it's actually more difficult to construct something in the United States, I think. You guys...
Right? Or, there's so many restrictions now, and restrictions are coming. Like, again, I know I bring up Vermont again, because it really is, Vermont is a highly tourism centric market with extremely low inventory, but extremely high regulations and high taxes and a high cost of carry. So it's, it sounds very appealing, but it's very, very hard.
Yes. And I admire you guys so much. I think it's because I don't do what I do.
If you can do it, it can be really, really great. And there are people here that are very successful at doing it. And I think if you did the same thing, or you message 20 Airbnb hosts, you probably get 19 absolutely not going to help you. And then you get one that is like, hey, here's what it really is like. And there are people that are managing it more professionally and specializing in that management. That's happening, which did not happen in our markets before. And I actually think it's really great for our local economy, because it is actually bringing in local vendors. It's helping small business owners who are carpenters, cleaners, hosts. That's
exactly
the type of industry that is bringing money into the communities.
Yes.
And I own a coffee shop here in Brattleboro. We need the tourists. so we can keep paying our employees, and we can grow as a community. So
yeah. I hope the city councils are listening to this podcast, guys.
Yes. Short-term rentals are. We need everyone needs a place to stay, and it's a great way to liven the local economy.
Sure. And the nice thing about these emerging markets is that they recognize the importance of economic growth in the area. So you have much less concern about STR regulation, because they want foreign direct investment. They want people to go down there and build stuff and build up the hospitality industry. So they kind of lay out the red carpet for you in a lot of these places. And that's very different than in the United States.
Go where you're wanted.
So,
thank you so much, Martin. This has been an amazing interview. I've loved hearing your story. What are you looking at next? Or what are you looking for now, I should say, now and next?
So we are focused on 2024, growing our business in Latin America. I think Latin America's got tons of opportunity. We're doing 12 properties this year, 2 already under development in Costa Rica. We want to do 6 more there, 3 in Colombia. The last one, still debating whether we do Belize or Panama. But yeah, the long story short, we need investors. We need people that want to come in and help us build these. We have the teams in place. We're already set to do a few, but we want to do more. So if any limited partners, people that are interested in getting a piece of that really good yield, again, we're talking anywhere between 15 to 25% yield on these properties. We only allow accredited investors, just FYI. It's a minimum investment of $100,000.
Do you let them use the properties that they invest in?
100%. You have to understand that these properties are so sexy. Like, go to our website, www.thenovahouse.com, and you can look at some of the designs that we have. These are places you want to stay at. These are places that you want to host your family vacation at if you want to. Of course, there will be restrictions on when you can stay there. At the end of the day, we want these to produce good ROI. So if you want to take it for a Christmas weekend, you're gonna have to pay for that.
Right. It's like a timeshare that you actually make money.
Yeah, I don't want to use the word timeshare. It's not a
I
timeshare. This is something, we don't charge you fees. Like, you're making money. This is about you making an investment where you make money back. But if at some point in the year you want to get down there, we'll have a booking, internal booking where we can say like, all right, these dates are available. Like, go down there and check it out. So anybody that's interested in that should contact us.
So there are many people interested. So we'll absolutely put that in our show notes. And Martin, the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I would say just go to our website, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Martin Papp. Hopefully it's not videos of me singing in Chinese, and hopefully it's the actual LinkedIn profile. But yeah, so the novahouse.com, and the house is spelled with an H-A-U-S. So the German house, or look me up on social media.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Kate.
Welcome. What an amazing interview. You're doing such interesting, cool things, and I wish you the best of luck. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. I want to be back on here again once you got a million followers.
Yes. Oh, sounds great.
Let's do it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This is the Failures to Fortunes podcast, and I'm your host, Kate Berry, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Real Estate Investing Failures to Fortunes podcast. If you enjoyed today's stories and insights, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us. Remember, your journey in real estate is a marathon, not a sprint. Embrace the failures, learn from them, and turn them into your stepping stones to success. I'm Kate Berry, and until next time, keep hustling, stay inspired, and keep turning those failures into fortunes. Happy investing.